This is our very first in a new series that we're doing, Head-to-Head Coatings, where we are going to take two coatings that could be potentially considered for the same job and compare and contrast them so that people can see how you would think through them and how they should think through them in terms of what they bring to the table and how to choose that coating. One. Hi, and welcome to a Deliver More episode with your host, me, Francesca Vavala from Intech MKT. And as usual, I am joined here with our Teflon brain trusts of Chris Lord, who we know and love as Wolfy. And of course, Mike Patterson, the Teflon Don. Mike, say hi to everybody.
Hey, everyone. It's very nice to be included in the brain trust category. Wow.
Yeah. You guys are the brain trust, thought leaders, influencers of Teflon. You're just going to have to accept this fame and have you heard that it is.
$3 gets us a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah, right. So it's very infrequent my name and brain are used in the same sentence. So it's very enlightening.
Well, I am so glad to have your brains on this episode because we're going to need them. This is our very first in a new series that we're doing, Head-to-Head Coatings, where we are going to take two coatings that could be potentially considered for the same job and compare and contrast them so that people can see how you would think through them and how they should think through them in terms of what they bring to the table and how to choose that coating. So today we have a very special head-to-head for our very first one, and that is 420G-109 versus 959G-203. So let's kick it off. Wolfy, can you start us off? What are some of the differences between these two coatings, 420G-109 and 959G-203?
Well, first off, different fluoropolymers. 420G-109 is PTFE and 959G-203 is FEP. Yeah, they're different. I'm not going to get into that. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but they do have different performance characteristics for sure. Secondly, binder resin is different, and these are hybrid coatings, so they're fluoropolymer plus binder. They're self-priming, but the binder is different. Polyether sulfone is in 420G-109, and 959G-203 is polyamide imide. And we'll talk about that a little bit too. Max use temp. So 420G-109 rated to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. 959G-203, because it's FEP, is only rated to 425 Fahrenheit. So there's a little bit of difference there, and especially because they're FDA, that becomes really important. And then lastly, 420G-109 is normally listed just as a one coat. You can't apply multiple coats, but you can for both coats. Again, they're described as one coats, but you can do multiple coats if you like. There is a science to that in order to do that. And we get this question all the time. People want to use 420G-109 as a primer, and probably because it's in that 420 series, and we already have a 420 series primer, but it cannot be used as a primer. However, 959G-203 can. We don't usually recommend it, but if you're in a spot and you don't feel like buying another product, or you're just trying to finish a job, 959G-203 can fit right in there with a PFA or FEP top coat.
There's quite a few performance differences also. Chris kind of alluded to it. And it really stems from the fluoropolymer difference being the PTFE and the FEP, and also secondarily from the resin, because even though the fluoropolymer is at the surface of the coating, the resin does contribute to the performance because the coatings are thin. So when you have 3/4 of a mil, you're not going to have 100%, say, PTFE at the surface. You're going to have some PES. So it does tend to have an influence on performance, we'll say. But kind of get into some of the specifics. The first one in my mind really is if you're looking for performance that is more of a sliding surface versus a release, or like a peeling off, or a waffle coming out of a waffle, or a cookie coming out of a mold, or something like that. If it's a sliding application, the PTFE based coating, in this case the 420-109, tends to be the one I kind of lean towards. If it's a release application, then I tend to lean towards the 959G-203. So that's kind of an initial performance take on them. It's also one thing that when I look at these, obviously coefficient of friction is a big difference, and that's why the PTFE or the 420 line excels. The hardness is one that's pretty interesting because I had to look some data up for this one because I actually had this wrong when I thought what would be the harder of the two coatings. In this case, the 959-203 has a pencil hardness of 9H versus 420-109 is 3H. And that's pretty significant in the world of pencil hardness, Francesca. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
It hasn't come across my desk yet.
No, just did.
But it is one of those, that's a pretty significant difference. And I think it's related to the binders that are in those that lead to that additional hardness. And usually when you have more hardness, that also means you have better wear characteristics. So in this case, I double checked that against the Tabor abrasion testing. And in fact, 959 is a better wear coating. So to that extent, if you have a wear environment or a hardness critical environment, 959 is going to be the better. The last thing I'm going to point out, difference between 959-203 and 420G-109 is price. Now, even though these are both one coats, they are different in price. Not really the cost per container. The 4 kilogram container is basically about $30 difference. So there's really not much of difference there. But the coverage on the 959G-203 is about 50% more than the 420-109. So the cost per square foot is about half. So that's something to keep in mind. These are both low cost anyway, but 959 is even lower cost or more competitively priced than some of our others. So that's kind of the big ones that jump out at me in terms of difference between those two coatings.
Let's say somebody calls in and they're trying to decide between this 420G and the 959G for a food processing job. What would you ask them to help them decide which coating to choose, Wolfy?
I want to get out of the way is use temp.
The first thing I'm going to look at is, or ask about, is temperature.
The 109 is rated up to 500 degrees, where the other is only rated to 425 degrees. So, we definitely need to know that. And sometimes that can be a tricky question.
So I want to understand what is the maximum continuous use temperature for that application, because if it's above 425, the choice is easy. I'm going right to 420-109 as the answer. If it's 425 or below, they're both in play. So now I got to move to my next question, which is there any, I kind of stick with temperature. So is there any cure limitations on the substrate itself?
Is there any limitations with your cure temperature? So, maybe you're oven limited, or maybe the substrate can't handle, you're not comfortable going above 650 degrees. So, that can be an eliminator of a coating right there, because we could say, well, 959G-203 is a fit for you because it cures at 650 and it fits what you have.
So if it's a thin metal or something that's going to warp, it might be a lower temperature cure. Lower temperature cure immediately steers it to the 959 for me. Let's say there's no cure limitations. Now I'm coming to the performance end of it. Are they looking for a sliding surface, which would be a 420-109 performance, or a release or peeling type performance, which would be 959? That's probably going to do it right there.
For the performance you need, is this more of a sliding application or something where you need it to peel off or release from a part? Because, 420-109, we're going to go, for the sliding application. 959G-203 is more of a release coating, so, or peeling from the parts. So there would be a difference there.
I tend to also ask people about wear.
Are there any abrasion or wear concerns?
959, as we said earlier, is better for wear applications. But if they say something that leads me to believe it's a lot of wear or extreme wear, I'm going to steer them into something else, like maybe the 3-coat reinforced.
959G-203, because it has that polyamide in it, it is a more durable coating, and can last longer if it's a extreme wear situation. Whereas 420G-109 is going to be a little softer. And then film thickness requirements. You can build 959G in multiple coats relatively easily, and can build it past what 420G-109 can build to. So if you do have a requirement where you can build some film build, then 959G-203 is going to be your candidate for that.
I'll start trying to position almost just like a safeguard, because a lot of times people get a spec and they're just trying to check the boxes to answer the questions, see if they have something that can be applied. But again, the last thing we want to do is kind of do a shortcut and miss something that might be the difference between an okay performance and an excellent performance. Between these two coatings, I can get to the answer in 3 questions.
We never, try to answer a question where it's just one versus another. I liked how you brought in, like, hey, if it's extreme wear, like I maybe it's not either one of these.
Yeah, but we're doing a head-to-head here, guys.
I know.
We gotta operate within the framework of the story. It's pretty easy then to see how somebody can be guided into the right decision for their coating for their part. And speaking of which, it's time for a very fun question. Fun for me to ask, fun for you to answer, hopefully fun for you to listen to. And this question is, if you were an inanimate object, what would you be and why?
Chris is already confused.
Yeah, that too. We would go back to the brain and my name, comment earlier. So, an inanimate object,
an unalive fixed object. What would you be, and why?
Jesus, God, Mike, you can go first.
Okay. I mean, since we're into baseball season now, I watched a fair amount of baseball over the weekend. I think I would be the center field scoreboard at an MLB baseball field, because you have a great seat to 80 some home games, and you're always, you have good people are looking at you, cheering, doing whatever. So it's it's a good spot to be.
All right, Mike is keeping score, and
the extra time didn't help Mike, by the way.
He's still trying to figure out what inanimate means.
Since I just, gosh, yeah, that's probably living. I was gonna say I'll be the sand at the beach, but it might be because I'm in paradise. I mean, I'm at the beach all the time.
Man, my dog just took his shit on you.
So the fish, they get a bath in the water too, Mike. So the water makes full of it too.
Wolfy is the sand beneath your feet. I like this. Okay. You know what? That answer works because you seemed a little unsure of it. And certainly sand is the worst foundation to build on. So there you go. That jives.
Wow.
I think I would be a really cool boulder in the forest because I could just be chilling for most of the time. And
I mean, all the time, right?
Until you get put in motion.
Unless there's a sudden avalanche. Signing off the Teflon Team from Florigistics and myself from Intech MKT. Thanks so much for staying in. Nope. Thanks so much for staying with us. And make sure you tune in next time from Delaware. Bye, guys.